Hey folks, last week we looked back at the 10 best performances from Season 9 of American Idol, and this week we're going to look back at the 10 worst. So leave yours down in the comments section. I understand it can be a little bit difficult to narrow it down to just 10. It was a little bit difficult for me, but just leave however many you want to. If you want to do 3 or 20 or 14 or... I don't care. Anyway, here's my list. Number 10 was Michael Lynch, Will You Be There? Now, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh with this choice because it wouldn't have been super terrible if I weren't comparing it to the Michael Jackson version in my head. But how can you not, really? What was going through Big Mike's head when he decided to sing this song? It was such a stupid song choice. The only thing you're going to prove singing a Michael Jackson song just months after his death is that your version is inferior, and his definitely was inferior. I thought it sounded awful. And usually Big Mike sounded pretty good, even when I was bored to tears with his performances. Usually his vocals were spot on, but they were not spot on with this song. Not only that, but it was movie week, and Big Mike chooses a song from a movie about saving a whale. It's almost like he wanted to be the butt of so many jokes. Even Jamie Foxx, who was a mentor that week, didn't like it. He tried to give Mike a contestant t-shirt, as opposed to the artist t-shirt that he gave to the others, which I didn't think they really deserved those either. But Mike wouldn't take it anyway. Number 9, DeWyze, You're Still the One. Now, some of you asked me why none of Lee's performances were in my top 10 favorites, and the answer to that is really pretty simple. I didn't think they were very good. Okay, overall, he was usually okay, but none of his performances really jumped out at me except this one, because it was terrible. And I really wanted to like it. I did. And I wanted to like DeWyze. And when he was rehearsing this song with Shania Twain, I thought it was going to be good, but when he took it to the stage, it just all fell apart. I thought it was terrible. Of course, the judges loved it for some inexplicable reason, but even Randy conceded that it started out pitchy. Name me one DeWyze performance that didn't start out pitchy. And what do you mean, started out pitchy? It was pitchy all throughout. Even more so than the typical DeWyze performance, which is saying a whole lot. I thought it was awful. Number 8 was Tim Urban's Sweet Love. Now, vocally, this probably wasn't Tim's worst, even though it did sound pretty awful. But as an overall performance, it was just atrocious. It was verging on creepy with those big eyes. It's much the same look that you would expect to see from a serial killer right before he takes you out. Well, I mean, takes you out as in kills you, not takes you out to dinner. Serial killers really usually aren't very concerned about chivalry, but Tim does look like he would make a very good killer in like one of those Lifetime movies or something. Because, you know, usually you see killers and stalkers and stuff in the newspaper, and they're usually either plain to look at or right down ugly. And 9 out of 10 times in the movies, the killers and the stalkers, they're the best looking ones. Back when I was a kid, I used to have a crush on Mark Harmon after I saw him in that Ted Bundy movie. Anyway, moving on. Number 7 was Siobhan Magnus, Any Man of Mine. Now, this was the performance that got Siobhan eliminated, and it's not hard to understand why. I thought it was terrible, and the look on Shania Twain's face tells me that she felt the same way about it. Of course, the judges loved it, but there wasn't really no rhyme or reason behind why they liked 90% of the stuff that they liked this season. Obviously, people at home disagreed because she went home the very next night. Of course, some of Siobhan's hardcore fans couldn't accept that. They insisted that she was inadvertently eliminated because of the wrong number that was posted on a Facebook fan page. And then they started circulating a petition to try to get her reinstated on the show. And looking over the petition, I did not see one person that says that they accidentally called the wrong number because of that Facebook fan page. Not one. But Siobhan has very loud fans this season, and some of them are still signing that petition every day. It just doesn't make much sense. So it was a horrible performance, and that's why she went home. Number 6 was Lacey Brown, Landslide. Now, this was the first week of the top 24. My expectations for Lacey were already lower than low, since she had made it to the top 50 in Season 8, and then lost in a sing-off with Megan Joy. Megan Joy! That's got to be hard to do. But this performance was even worse than I was expecting. The good thing for Lacey was that somehow she managed to survive that week, and then it was so horrible that everything after that seemed to be not so bad in comparison. Number 5 was Casey James, Blue Skies. Poor Casey, towards the end of the season, it felt like a downward spiral for him. Beginning with this performance, it was Sinatra week, and for the first time he was not allowed to play his guitar, which was kind of cruel if you stop and think about it. It would be like plucking a nursing infant off of his mother's bosom. It's just not a nice thing to do. Everything about this performance was terrible, though, so it was quite appropriate that he came out wearing the same outfit that Danny Gokey wore in his Dream On performance in Season 8. But he didn't make any excuses, though. So often this season, when somebody had a terrible performance, they just made excuses, made lame excuses, or they got mad at the judges. Casey didn't even get mad when Kara said that he sounded like a lamb. Of course, he had sounded like a lamb all season, so it was kind of late for her to bring that up. But his mom got mad, didn't she? Did y'all see her out in the audience? She was just making faces like she wanted to kick Kara Dioguardi's ass. I would have loved to seen that. Anyway, number 4 is Lily Scott. I Fall to Pieces. Now, a lot of people were surprised that Lily went home. I was a little bit surprised too, but the only reason I was surprised is because she had the pimp spot. And normally that's been a pretty safe spot, so that's the only reason I was surprised. But looking back at the performance, her elimination should not have been surprising at all. I mean, it was beyond terrible. Now, I love the Patsy Cline version of this song, but Lily Scott sounds like Jessica Rabbit with the flu. I just didn't get this girl's appeal at all. Kara thought that Lily made Patsy Cline feel current. What? Current? How? I hate that about Kara because she's always telling people that they feel commercial or current. And I don't know where she listens to the radio at, but just about every time she tells somebody that could be on the radio now, I can't help but think, where? What, in the torture chambers at Guantanamo Bay? I don't know. Right alongside No Boundaries, I guess. When she was eliminated the next night, she said, I don't know what America wants to hear. I really don't. Way to insult the entire country and your fellow contestants, Lily Scott. Dignified. Number 3 was Jermaine Sellers, Get Here. Now, remember Jermaine's audition when he sang What If God Were One of Us, when people were saying that he was going to win the whole thing? It became painfully, very painfully clear after his first live performance that was never going to happen. Kara said, you went high and low, and not everybody can do that. I think most people could sound like Jermaine if they were being ripped apart. It's much the same sound I would expect to hear if a person was being eaten alive by a pack of wild hyenas. I was kind of surprised at how bad it really was, though, actually. And he seemed completely oblivious to it. He thought he did a great job with it. There's a fine line between confident and cocky, and he was way over the cocky line. From the Hollywood rounds to saying, I don't belong in a group, to throwing the band under the bus, then to the faces that he made at the judges. Finally, on his last week on the show, he tried to declare himself safe because he knew God. But apparently God didn't vote for him either. Number 2 was Paige Miles, Against All Odds. Now, this wasn't Paige's first terrible performance. I think she had only had one good performance throughout her entire run, but that was really only good in comparison to her other train wrecks. But this was the caboose that derailed the train. It was the performance that finally sent Paige packing. Not only was the singing terrible, but the song choice was incredibly stupid. Now, Paige said that she didn't know that the song had been done a million times, but come on. Didn't you ever watch the show before? And they know during the summer that they're going to Hollywood, so I would spend the entire summer becoming obsessed. I would be obsessed with the show the entire summer. Of course, I'm obsessed with the show anyway. But if I were going to be on the show, I would spend the entire few months leading up to being on the live shows, looking up things about the shows. And before I picked a song, I would look into its history on the show. All it takes is a quick Google. I don't know why she didn't do it. But the one thing I liked less about Paige than that performance was her excuses. She always had an excuse. Either she was sick or she was a distraught Michael Jackson fan. She always had an excuse every week and for why she wasn't the best girl singer Simon had proclaimed her to be at the beginning of the season. Instead of just admitting she just didn't do very well. And the number 1 worst performance of the season, in my opinion, was Siobhan Magnus, Through the Fire. I felt like I had been dragged, but it sounded like she was in the fire while she was singing that song. Obviously, I had never been a Siobhan fan, but even Siobhan's hardcore fans were cringing at this one. To call it a hot mess would be an insult to hot messes. It was all over the place, and it just got progressively worse throughout the whole thing. Ending in that ridiculous, out-of-place scream that she always liked to put in the songs, for no other reason than I guess she didn't have any other tricks up her sleeve that she thought she could impress people with, so she just screamed, and some people liked it. But I thought it was a nightmare. And the judges threw softballs at her. Randy and Ellen said, it wasn't your best performance. Kara said, everybody isn't entitled to an off night. Tell that to a surgeon that amputates the wrong limb. Well, everybody makes mistakes. Well, I understand this isn't as important as a doctor removing limbs, but still. Siobhan said, even if I didn't kill it, I wanted to prove that I was willing to try. And I think she did kill it. She absolutely murdered it. So anyway, these are my top 10 worst performances of the season. So feel free to leave yours down in the comments section, and I will see you folks in a few days. Bye.